الحضور الكريم، يرجى البقاء في أماكنكم. جلسة نقاشية يديرها السيد كارل تليس، المؤسس والرئيس التنفيذي لشركة iAdvisory، ستبدأ بعد لحظات. Dear guests, a panel session moderated by Carl Tlace, founder and CEO of iAdvisory, is going to start in a few moments. Kindly be seated.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see a big audience here for the inaugural Dubai Metaverse Assembly and the first panel session of today. My name is Carl Tlace. By way of introduction, I'm a strategic advisor and founder of iAdvisory. I advise a significant amount of entities that are building the digital economy and essentially realising the opportunity around the Metaverse ecosystem. Today, we're going to be joined by an esteemed panel led by His Excellency Abdullah bin Turk Al-Mari, Minister of Economy for the UAE. We've got Bashar Kalani, Managing Director of Accenture, Middle East, and Mark Zaletti, Managing Partner for BCG Ventures. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
So I'm going to kick off the session today by first providing a little synopsis on the lay of the land and the Metaverse ecosystem, just to bring it all into context and get an understanding of where things have been and where they are going relative to today's economic environment, but also the opportunity around the digital transformation that's happening. So we are going to cover off a few areas which are more strategic and relevant to the UAE. We're going to outline the vision and the new digital economic reality that's relevant for this region. We're going to look at establishing or understanding how we can establish the UAE as a net export hub for digital economy and metaverse solutions of the future. We're also going to look at regulation, infrastructure, R&D, obviously talent and investment around this space. And we're also going to look at something really important and critical, which is the Gen Z effect. And I think that's really what we're all pretty excited about what's coming and how quickly things can move. So just a bit of a synopsis. I went through a lot of background over the last 12 months to understand this space a little bit more deeply. I've actually co-authored a white paper called Economics and AI in the Metaverse. And a lot of the discussion points that will reverberate around today will be led through some of that research, but also specifically around the activities that's happening in this region, specifically within the UAE. So the Metaverse can be categorized as an immersive way for people through virtual reality, augmented reality, video, to engage and trade within a digital universe and environment, encompassing multi-layer gaming and also remote working and education. At its core is a digital economy which is expected to be shaped by Gen Z and the future generations. Overall, on the Metaverse front, global estimates of the size of the Metaverse economic opportunity range anywhere between 8 trillion and 13 trillion, depending on what hour of the day we're all talking about this. But those users are growing at an incredible rate. Some estimates are saying that the user base for the Metaverse economy will be upwards around 5 billion within the next decade. However, Gen Z, which is the generation born during the internet age, that's post-1990, are expected to be the real creators and drivers of the Metaverse economy. They're expected to earn an income in excess of $33 trillion over the next 10 years. And if you think about that over the coming decade, most of that will be spent online, and a significant portion of that will be also within the Metaverse ecosystem. So activity in this region is booming, obviously, and with the UAE poised to capitalize on the massive opportunity to drive future economic growth through a knowledge-based and digital economy, we're at the heart of something quite unique, which is establishing a global hub for the Metaverse economy. So on that note, I'm going to head into the first question. And obviously, it's going to be to Your Excellency. Could you please share with us the vision and the size of the Metaverse economic opportunity for the UAE?
Thank you first of all, thank you so much for having me here, and good morning to everyone. Carl, thank you so much for having and hosting us today. And I think it's important to really shed a little bit light on the macroeconomic level on the metaverse as aspect. And what the UAE has been doing in the last couple of years or decades and the strategies moving forward. UAE's economy always been on innovation, technology, aspect strategies. And it has been proven as well when we saw the COVID-19, the pandemic, and post-COVID-19 pandemic, we saw the accelerations of fourth industrial revolution strategies going forward. That's really bring us to where we are here today. Why are we taking this leap into a new phase of a technology that we are very worried about and very uncertain about the extent of this technology? And I think that most important aspect that the future of economies will really depend on these technologies and how we take them on. I think that's from the aspect of what we saw as well with Khalfan Bilhol speech in the morning. We saw the decades of infrastructure, the leap of the leaders, the visionaries aspects of moving from back from a trade, kind of a seaport to an airport, and today where we are as a brain port. And we're saying that, we worked lately as well in attracting talent. So the metaverse and technologies of such economy and a knowledge-based innovation economy really based on talent. With the golden visa regime, the green visa regime, the freelancers visa regime, all of that really entails that UAE is a land for talent to come in and really experiment the futures of technology into it. We've seen a lot of aspects on the ground. We've seen a lot of talents coming in. We've seen a lot of companies opening up and really basing their operations in the UAE, and specifically in Dubai, and more specific areas of the metaverse. From that as well, we've seen governments, local governments, federal governments launching strategies in the technology. We've seen the digital strategy of the UAE. We've seen Dubai blockchain strategy. We've seen the national program on artificial intelligence. That, what you see, is visionary kind of leadership into where we want to take the aspects of our visions into the economy and where to aspect. So the message for the audience today, when you look at where the UAE is going, there's a lot of programs and initiatives to really push forward to that, and talent. And I think that's the most important part. It's the kind of the basis of where you want to take this, is you have the right talent, you can hire the right talent, and you can really look at technologies of the future.
Absolutely. No, talent is the key word. Absolutely. Bashar, on the Accenture front, can you elaborate?
I think the numbers that you highlighted are large and big. I just want to put them into context here. Today, when we talk about 8 to 13 trillion, this is maybe 1.5 times the digital economy today. Yeah? So quite an impressive number. It's probably the size of the third largest economy in the world, maybe Japan. So we will add another economy to the global economy around the metaverse. And this is driven by two things, as you said. One is definitely technology. And the second one is the Generation Z, the new users of these technologies. And we're blessed in this part of the world to have 70% of our population under the age of 30. So we're really in a very fortunate position here to take advantage of this new wave. But let's look a little bit more about how this is actually going to be made up of. So when we talk 13 trillion or 8 or whatever the number is, a lot of it is definitely going to be infrastructure. We talk about computing power, we're talking about cloud capabilities, bandwidth, and that's really the important infrastructure. And I think the region here and the UAE is blessed to have one of the world's best infrastructure when it comes to IT and digitization. The next level, of course, is what I would call the enablers. And I'm talking here about payment and monetization capabilities. I'm talking here about digital ID, and I think in the UAE we've made a very forward-looking leap here with an infrastructure on digital ID. And then, of course, rules, regulations, Cloud Act, data law, all these different regulations that regulate that space in addition to cybersecurity. Coming up, the next layer is definitely going to be the platforms, and we're all aware of the major platforms and how that is shaping up. But more importantly is actually what we will talk about in the next level, which is the actual content creation, and that's where talent is an extremely important thing. This is where we create the virtual world, the applications and the contents, and that's where most of the economic activity is going to take place, and that's going to be at a very large scale, transforming what today is our normal tasks that we will move gradually to the metaverse as we develop that. So a very exciting few years coming ahead, where the metaverse for the enterprise, the metaverse for business, the metaverse for government are going to start to take shape. And I think talent is key in this game.
Absolutely. Talent squared so far. Mark, on your side, mate.
Good morning, Carl. Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't know, I think the shark covered almost everything there. I mean, I think from our perspective, we're seeing, we're estimating, I don't know, 250 to 400 billion over the next 5 years, going up to $1 trillion in 10 years. To be honest, I think our crystal ball is as good or as bad as anyone else's. I think what we all are in violent agreement on is that it's going to be super huge. Now, I was, I don't know if I was fortunate enough, but I'm certainly old enough. I was in Silicon Valley back in the late 90s with a company then which ended up being at that point the largest IPO in history, and that was Web 1.0. Moving to Paris in so 2007 with Dailymotion, Web 2.0. The speed at which things were developing and evolving then, we got, within 3 years, we're up to 1 billion video views a month, so it's a video sharing site. This, though, when you think of the metaverse, is a whole different dimension. We're talking about, exponential growth like I think we've never seen. The issue is, will we be able to keep up, and will old guys like us be able to keep up with the young folks? Now, you mentioned Gen Z. Just want to touch on that slightly. When you think about the internet in the initial early years and the nascent years, it was something new, and it took quite a while to get going, if you like. Because all those that you talk about, the Gen Zs, were born in the internet era, know nothing else but the internet, they're already on it, they're already doing it, they're already creating it. And because so many people are already on it, and the costs of technology have gone down to such an extent, it's going to be a rocket ship. So I think the numbers are just going to be phenomenal, whatever they are.
Yeah, the words I use is we're at the tip of an unknown-sized iceberg, and I think that's really the key, because when we start to think about where this could go, it's that creative aspect, and we'll touch on that later, in guess of what our thoughts are around that Gen Z effect. Back to you, Your Excellency, because I want to dive in a little bit more around the collaboration side, particularly around government and the private sector collaboration. How can we sort of bring that together to help establish the UAE as that global net export hub? I love using the word net export hub for that digital economy and metaverse economy of the future.
Where we see ourselves today didn't come out of the sky. I think if you go back 2 decades ago, when we started with the e-government in the UAE, back in early 2000, when the UAE launched the strategy for e-government, and 10 years down the line, we launched the strategy for smart government. And 10 years after that, we launched the strategy for digital government. So the UAE visionary leaders really put a kind of a setup where the UAE pushed the government and the private sector to work and really establish where we are today. We have the highest 5G network, the fastest in the world. I think that's something as well that says that the UAE really set up today where it is at the moment to really launch the future of technologies and future aspects. These last 2 decades really showed a huge transformational change in how governments really think. In the UAE, the government is ahead of private sector. It really pushes it and supports the private sector, and as well the private sector is hand in hand with the government in aspects. And we've seen companies in the private sector opening huge digital and spaces in the UAE where that's kind of showcases as well how the technology, how the visionary leaders have set this kind of transformation where we are today. And I think moving forward, we're going to see more of that with all these programs we have, with the digitization agenda that we have, the Council of Digitization in the government that has been launched a couple of weeks ago, that really shows you that the government is moving towards a paperless government, towards a government that really pushes services into the mobile. I remember His Highness when he stood up and he said, I want the apps on the mobile 24/7. And then years later, he came and he said, I want digital government. And those who doesn't move to a digital government, you have 1 year to do that, and we're going to celebrate your retirement. And that was something which was shocking for government leaders to say, you need to move, we need to move to that. That's visionary leaders setting a stage that this is an aspect where we need to operate and work with the private sector and be like a private sector in our modality and our thinking.
Absolutely, and I've been here 16 years, and seeing that transformation led by that visionary approach has been quite phenomenal. I've just come back from Sydney, and seeing the appetite to replicate what's happening here, it's already starting, that whole net export realisation, absolutely. Bashar, on your side?
I think the magic phrase here is from export to the metaverse.
I like that.
I think we've seen a government here that really sets the stage and enables innovation and transformation. We've been working a few years back on an initiative called Dubai 10X, where we were looking at the future 10 years from that time. I think the pandemic changed everything. A lot of what we were anticipating to happen 10 years really happened much earlier.
It was with Bashar, Silicon Valley,
Yes.
started 10X.
So it was really a great exercise, and I think having this foresight and setting the platform for this kind of innovation is important. We are now reimagining almost everything. Let me give you an example of what we did at Accenture. During the pandemic, we hired more than 150,000 people across the world. It was difficult to move around, difficult to fly them in for training, onboarding, education. So we had to look at a virtual environment to provide immersive experiences. And we came up with something that's called the One Accenture Park, where we were able to create an environment to onboard 150,000 people all over the world. And of course, this has now changed the way we are working at Accenture, at any other organization. We're working in a different world. We're using these immersive experiences not only for education, upskilling, town halls and immersive environments, but also to engage with our customers and partners, but also to create digital twins for the businesses that we have. And I think if you start to imagine the enterprise or the government of the future, you will see different components that are quickly coming together. And as we move from the Internet of Things to the Internet of Places, we are really at the cusp of something very interesting. We're trying to show something today on that transformation.
Yeah, and I like that we're at the Internet of Places, which is really, really important. Ultimately, that's where we're going to congregate. And I think being a part of that is really, really important. Mark, on your side.
You know, just being here, this event shows the intention of the region and specifically of Dubai. And I think this is already something that shows that the leadership starts from the top, the investment, the technology, the ability to train, attract talent, the magical word again that's come across. But for me, you know, also what's attracted me, when I was in Silicon Valley 25 years ago, so it's a generation ago, I feel the pull here. I feel the force, right? This is where the energy that Silicon Valley had 25 years ago is here. So I see the you know, creating the right environment for startups. I mean, already in the last 4 years across the world, I think it's $36 billion have gone into 4,200 companies. I think the vast majority of new businesses can start to be created here, not just only by large corporations, which I think should be getting into the metaverse, trying something and seeing what works. The difference between now and Web 1.0 is that there's a lot of experience, there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of the technologies there, and it's a lot more, well, it's a lot less expensive, let's put it that way, right? So it's not cheap, but it's a lot less expensive. And I think that with that, just go in it and try it, see what happens, and see where it takes you, because it's going to be an iterative approach. And I do think that those that wait will lose this time around, because I think it will go so quickly. And I think in a place, especially like Dubai, where it's all happening, it's a positive, perfect storm, if you like, of creativity, of infrastructure, of leadership, of investment, that if you're not in it, you won't win it. And I think the early adopters will be the winners, because it's like I said, it's an iterative process. those that are the laggards will be the ones that, even if they invest a lot of money later on, and it will be disproportionately a lot of money, they may not even win it then.
I'd like to add a few words as well, just to tap on how the leadership and the private sector really kind of push this kind of ecosystem further. I remember 2 years ago when there was a cabinet reshuffle and coming into the government, and I think one thing which His Highness announced as well, not just a cabinet reshuffle, he said, I want 50% of your service centers to be digital, or to move digital, close down 50% of your service centers physically. At that time in the Ministry of Economy, we had about 7 service centers, or 8 service centers. And I looked at it and I said, where are the employees at the moment, and how do we do our services? Well, they all came back, well, services done digitally. So, okay, let's close 8 of them. So rather than going 50%, the technology, the private sector actually provided the setup. So we closed all our service centers back then 2 years ago, and we just went on a digital aspects. And because it was COVID, people on lockdown, you kind of move. So we managed to really adapt internally in the Ministry of Economy to really perform and provide services on a digital ecosystem. From that as well, today, we're launching our 3rd address. We have an address in Abu Dhabi, physically. We have an address in Dubai, physically. And our 3rd address is going to be on the Metaverse, where we're going to provide services, full services, into the Metaverse aspect, and about reskilling the whole team in the Ministry of Economy, an aspect where we can provide services. We want to replace our website, basically. Rather than having a 2D website, you have a 3D Metaverse immersive where you go in and you can interact with people, you can take a token, you can sit down, you can actually ask for the service, and you can see an employee. And maybe I can walk around as well on the Metaverse and really look at the people that comes in and actually interact.
I love that. I love the fact that it's around immersive experience within that environment and providing that versus a 2D experience, which we currently get through websites, right? And the idea is traversing.
Who reads websites at the moment?
Good question. Exactly. That leads, I guess, to also the key words we were talking about. We were talking about talent earlier. We were talking about also, obviously, regulation, but infrastructure as well. Seconding all that is investment. So I guess what are some of those key priorities, Your Excellency, around helping that we ensure a sustainable growth and sustainable economic opportunity for this sector moving forward, given those sort of 4 key areas?
I think on the regulation part, the UAE, which really builds up what we said about the decades of strategies and the programs that have done and the visionary kind of set of regulations, we have seen 40 regulations has been disturbed in the last year and a half that really set up things so nicely where we are today. We've seen Dubai launching VARA, the Virtual Asset Regulation Authority. We've seen the highest regulations in AGM, for instance. We're going to see ESCA today as well having a regulation on the virtual aspects. So there are a huge amount of regulations coming in, and from that kind of aspect, the UAE leadership and the UAE entities, government, say, let it be federal, local, is very close to the private sector, understanding the means and understanding the risks. But the UAE is always an ambitious young nation. Always looking forward, always wants to change, always agile. I think that's something which is important to encompass. On the aspect of regulation, then moving towards talent, like I said, the UAE used to be seaport, airport, and today is a brain port. With kind of the golden visas, the green visas, and the aspects of freelancers, you're going to see a huge immersive as well of talent coming in, supporting because of the regulation changes, because of the support of the ecosystem. I remember back in COVID-19, I was sitting with the private sector. One thing they said to us is that we understand that it's very safe to be in the UAE, but we're worried about one thing, and they said keep us informed. We do not like regulation to change a lot. We want to understand what's happening. So we managed as well to build the regulations in the UAE bottom-up approach. And whatever we do, make sure that the private sector really understand the changes that are coming in and really allow the ecosystem for more investments and aspects. And from an infrastructure today, we've seen the 5G technology and utility in the UAE. We're moving on a very high speed aspects of internet, which allows the investments to come in and really look at that kind of thinking and bringing all this together.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key thing. It's bringing it all together and getting the key partners to work together on helping influence what that could look like. I think that's really important. Bashar, I know you've been part of a lot of this.
Key word here is responsible metaverse. Yeah. And I think we have an opportunity to shape the metaverse and the engagement in the metaverse. And I think there are two aspects to responsible metaverse. One is creating the trust. And that is security, privacy, protecting your IP, resilience in the system. The system is really resilient. And I think these four elements contribute towards creating the trust in this environment. But more importantly, in my view, is the human aspect of the responsible metaverse. And here I'm talking about human well-being. How do they behave in the metaverse? What are the etiquettes and the behaviors and the ethics in the metaverse? Very important is the focus on sustainability, safety. And then extremely important is to address the points of inclusion and equity and all that stuff in this new world. So if we manage to create an environment where we address the human element and the trust element under the umbrella of responsible metaverse, I think that will give initiatives coming out of this part of the world or this country a lot of credibility and a lot of forward-looking initiatives.
Absolutely. Trust and security is really important as part of this. And we've obviously been part of some of those policy, law and order working committees to look at how we can provide some recommendations toward that. And I think that's, the more of that, the better, bringing an ecosystem together. Yeah. Mark?
You know, the fact that we're even talking about safety, security, making sure there is a very safe environment shows you how far the metaverse has come, because you don't worry about those things unless there's something to worry about. So already thinking about that, being engaged in that, shows that this is obviously a medium that we need to be in. Certainly, these are all issues that need to be addressed and need to be addressed properly. I think the other element to think about is that, again, it's one of these things, the virtuous circle. The more people are engaged, the more people that get involved in the metaverse, the lower the barriers to entry, the lower the costs for folks to engage in it. And I think that's something to consider, that it can't just be a medium for the wealthy, but it's got to be something for everybody for it to really take off. All those other issues notwithstanding. But I think the more, again, the more the people get involved in it, the more the applications and the different things that you can do in the metaverse actually start transpiring, and we have safety and security, then we can bring in more people. It almost creates a vortex, if you like, for everybody else to join, because they can also afford to be in it. And I think that's something that gets a little bit overlooked, because when you talk about starting something new, it's always those with the money that can do it. But as more and more can be involved, I think it's a great leveler as well.
Yeah, I love that fact that you're talking about leveling, because a lot of the times I talk about activating the inactive economy. And that inactive economy are those part of the economy which are not online, which are not currently having that access, and are not currently being able to engage in this digital economy. When we start to activate that, you start to see the digital economic output that comes through this, and then it becomes sustainable. Yeah. And I think this is really important, and you touched on a really important point there, absolutely. I am looking at the time, and I want to finish with a key question, and you guys are going to like this one. So how do you see, Your Excellency, it's going to be the first one for you, because you're going to love this. How do you see a future where consumers have a digital twin or a personal avatar traversing that metaverse and providing economic contribution back to you personally?
I think touching base on the Generation Z you mentioned, I think earlier in this talk today, and I think that's something which we will see a lot of that happen. They're going to spend, Generation Z is our kids, basically, and they're going to spend most of their income on, let's say, the metaverse, creating avatars. And I have a 10-year-old daughter. she's all over Roblox, right? I don't know if that's kind of a metaverse, but that's kind of a place where she interacts. She spends some of my credit cards on that, and I think that's most of that kind of my income is going to go. And I think it's important to really think about the Generation Z and their thinking of how they want to immerse themselves, creating friends on that. And I like the point of responsible metaverse. How do we really create kind of a safe environment, protecting IPs and protecting technology and protecting people as well. And I think that's something which we will probably see in the future. So the movement is there. I think the generation is really pushing forward to really advance it forward. And I think the metaverse itself is at phase one at the moment. It's a technology that we need to explore. We need not to really stop. We need to make sure that we take that kind of testing. And I remember His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid a couple of years ago said the UAE is kind of a testing bed for future technologies. These are in a place where we are today. Let's test this. Let's take this phase one and really immerse ourselves into it and really kind of use it and see what we learned out of it. How can we change and move things differently? How can we be more efficient as government, more effective, and reach people and the generation that we're looking at?
Absolutely. I love that. Bashar,
Yes.
you've got a personal story on this one.
Yeah, we had a story. I have two teenage boys, one at university, one last year at school, and I got them to tell me about the metaverse. I updated them on what we're doing and so on. First thing is they are not impressed. They think this is business as usual. They've spent most of their childhood and time in these virtual worlds. So to them, this is second nature. When I asked them, what do we need to do? And they said, first thing is you need to create an avatar for yourself. Because that's how you're going to be moving in this new world. And will be moved from one place to the other and so on. And I think most of us will have to create an avatar one way or the other. The next thing is we thought it would be good to create a digital twin for our home. And once we've got a digital twin of our home, we can actually go to these virtual worlds and have friends and family visit, and we can probably visit them as well and so on. But the point here is they are in a different world. They've got ideas and thoughts about what this metaverse means for them. That's really beyond what we think it is. So I would argue every one of us would have at least one avatar. Maybe every house will have a digital twin that we will take with us and put it in the right place and become neighbors and friends with people we probably had never met before and start to engage in an immersive world far beyond what we expect today to be the situation. And of course, take that to work, take that to fun and tourism, and it goes like that.
Totally. Mark, I think you shared with me last night some onboarding experience.
I was going to tell you about an onboarding experience. I'll just say that what's triggered my thought process. Now, my kids also Gen Z as well, and I would say one expression that my daughter always uses, which I think will be more and more prevalent for that for that generation, is living my best life, and. I do think that that's where it's going to go. I think you can. I mean, there's of course there's gaming. Of course there's watch movies, go to a concert, I think digital twins are going to be prevalent. You'll be able to do, I think, whatever you want to do, tourism, go visit somewhere. And then if you like it, you can go and do it physically as well. So I think I would sum it up and say living my best life. But to be honest, after this, I've got to rush off and I've got to get my biometrics done. So we were talking last night. So wouldn't it be cool now if I could just
outsource it?
That's it. Could I just do it now, virtually, and then be done? That would be great. But yeah, ultimately, I think if we could all live our best life, I think we'd all be very happy.
I think we could all do with our own personal avatars, doing something of contribution to our physical world in the virtual world. So this has been really the panel discussion today. Really appreciate everyone being here. But there is an announcement, Your Excellency, you wanted to make. I think you touched on it earlier, but go for it.
Yes, I'd like to touch back to the Ministry of Economy on the Metaverse. We are announcing today, using the Dubai Metaverse Assembly, our third address, like I said, and I think it's important to bring our Metaverse guy, Khalif Al-Jaziri, on stage. He's the face of our Metaverse. And I think he will be... Come on.